Hi everyone, it's Sam, NFTstatistics with your proof daily NFT countdown. Going to talk a bit about the Super Bowl today, a bit about lending, about ETH versus NFTs. But first, let's start with a quick market overview. Volumes were up again, kind of in a similar range to yesterday. Again, though, I think a lot of this is because of airdrop farming on Blur. We went into depth on that yesterday. If you look at OpenSea volumes, they're pretty flat relative to the past. I think the big story was less in NFTs, but more in ETH. We saw ETH fall 6% on the back of SEC news. We will talk a little bit more about that later. Floors in general were down across the board. I think big down ETH moves tend not to be good for NFTs. Weakness in Gutter Cats, Clone X, Doodles, Moonbirds, all in the large cap index. In the mid cap index, a lot of weakness in Potatoes, Renga, Pudgy Penguins. Did have some strong collections, offset it though with On-Chain Monkeys, Quirkies, A Kid Called Beast, all up a fair bit. I think what's happening now also is a lot of the themes that were really hot a couple weeks ago are starting to unwind a little bit. You know, we see it here with 6529 meme cards, down more than 50% since their peak, kind of nearing back to around where we were in that first week of January. And then VV checks for the first time really had a serious down day. The floor was as high as 2.5 ETH a couple days ago, floor around 1.6 last I checked. In terms of art blocks, brain drops, they're the real volume. The biggest highlight here is Life in West America. Discussed it briefly yesterday, but this AI art collection, did 79 trades, more than 200 ETH of volume. And a lot of other brain drops projects came with it, both from Pinder Van Armen, Claire Silver, Vadim Epstein. A lot of those projects, actually, if you own them, you get to mint newer brain drops. So I think that drove a lot of their strength. In terms of individual collections that did well, sewer passes bounced again. Yuga came out and said that sewer passes that were unused are going to be able to ultimately get redeemed. They used to say that if you did not actually play the game, you got no value from your pass. So there was worry they were all worthless that hadn't been used. Yuga said there'd be opportunity to get value from them yesterday. So the prices there popped. You also had Jeremy Booth, who launched this Boots Open Edition about a month ago, came out with a tweet that said refresh the metadata, and the image in the NFT moved from being Boots to this Boots Wrangler's jacket. And they announced that they were doing a partnership with Wrangler. So that's really exciting, really interesting. You can see that price has done very, very well at 0.16 ETH right now. Second story to talk about, Super Bowl and DigiDaigaku. For those who don't know, Gabe Layden runs DigiDaigaku, and a few months ago, they announced that they were spending more than $6 million on a Super Bowl ad to promote their NFT game, which is DigiDaigaku. They tweeted about it a couple days ago, right here. Gabe Layden, who runs the project, has already done 2 Super Bowl ads before, one here in 2015 with Kate Upton. Here's another one, Mobile Strike, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So this is not new to him. These were back again 5-10 years ago, but Gabe Layden has experience doing Super Bowl ads for games. Now, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he says or what this ad is and what they're planning. Gabe has been very outspoken about the idea of free mints. You can see in this quote, he says, if you want to onboard, 1 billion people in NFTs, you have to do it through free NFTs with no KYC, no exchange, no credit card. All you need is a wallet. He also said today on a Morning Spaces, he said, every screen you see in the future, you'll see him all the time giving you free NFTs. It's a marketer's dream. So I think what I expect to see is a Super Bowl ad here where there's some sort of QR code and a certain number of people, maybe, he said 10,000 for the Dragons, get to mint it for free. And the goal then is to not just get those people the free NFTs, but to create a lot of buzz where the tens of millions, 100 million people watching the Super Bowl all think what just happened, who got that free money, create some buzz around. I'm sure that these Dragons will be trading at a premium pretty quickly. If you look at other DigiDaigaku NFTs, they've launched a bunch. These 4 are the main ones that have been given to a DigiDaigaku Genesis holder. The whole package is now worth around 15 or 16 ETH between the Genesis, the Spirits, the Villains, and other NFTs that they've gotten. So one thing that's interesting is you haven't really seen a huge pump into the Super Bowl. Like basically over the past month, things have been pretty flat. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Here's just the DigiDaigaku chart. One thing Gabe says is this creates tremendous opportunity for hackers. So be very careful. Only mint what you see on that screen, what you see with that QR code. Don't take links anywhere else. Okay, I wanted to do a quick kind of rundown of what happened last year in the Super Bowl as well, because I thought it was a pretty interesting event. The entire NFT community was really excited about it, and it actually turned out to be broadly a letdown. You can see here, this is the large cap index. The Super Bowl happened when that football is there, and the index went down a fair bit. There were two different players that were involved. First was Nouns, and this was a bit more positive. They had their glasses featured in an advertisement by Bud Light. It was very passive. You couldn't really see it unless you knew about it. A bit of a dog whistle, but for NFT people, it was cool to see. When you look at how Nouns prices acted around it, you can see that Nouns really, like the auction prices, went up for about a month because they knew for a month that the glasses would be featured in the Super Bowl. And basically right at the event, the prices started to go down again. So this was a buy the rumor, sell the news, but interesting to see how that played out once it happened. It was cool that they got in there, but the prices started to fall pretty quickly. The second big player was Bored Ape Yacht Club. Everyone thought that Bored Apes were going to be mentioned in the halftime show because Eminem and Snoop were both performing. Then it got announced about a week ahead of time that would not happen. And what you ended up happening was a big run. And then when people realized that Super Bowl ad was not going to happen, the price fell pretty sharply. You can see there's the Hopium moment, then there was the football not happening moment, and the prices fell a fair bit. So kind of interesting to look back at last year's Super Bowl. I remember it very well. Obviously, Bored Apes ended up dropping ApeCoin, dropping other deeds, and completely pumping from there a month later. But interesting to go back there. Third story, SEC fines Kraken $30 million. And I also have ETH versus NFTs there because that's what I want to talk about. But the announcement was that Kraken is going to shut down their staking service and they have to pay a $30 million fine in an SEC settlement. I think what we saw on the back of that was that ETH went down about 6%, Bitcoin down. I think broadly speaking, the entire crypto ecosystem just doesn't do well when there's regulatory uncertainty. And this is, of course, that. Even, Bitcoin, which isn't really affected here, down substantial. I think it's just about the overall mentality of not wanting regulators to be too involved in the space. Now, on the back of that as well, the NFT large cap PFP index and pretty much almost all NFTs have been down as well. So we're seeing kind of that negativity bleed into NFTs also. What I wanted to look at is a theme I've kind of been interested in for a while, which is how do NFTs and ETH relate to each other? I think on our Twitter, we all see the people say things like ETH is up, so NFTs are down. But then also we'll hear markets down like it was yesterday. So of course, NFTs are down. I guess I want to know, what is it? Is ETH going up good for NFTs or is ETH going down good for NFTs? So I looked at my large cap PFP index, this index, and wanted to see how does that ETH performance relate to Ethereum prices, okay? And I put together this chart here, and I think it tells a very consistent story. At the bottom, basically says, what did ETH return over a 1 week period? And when ETH makes that return over a 1 week period, what does the large cap PFP index do over that 1 week period? And I think there are a couple very clear stories here. The first is that NFTs tend to do well when ETH does not make huge moves. So if over a week, ETH is anywhere from down 10% to up 15%, that tends to be a pretty benign environment for NFTs. They can do well in that environment. It's those wings there when ETH is down 10% or more and the market feels like it's really going down, or when ETH makes a huge rally up 15% or more and people would rather be in ETH, those are the times where the NFT indices tend to do pretty poorly. And I think that this chart really tells that story quite well. The other thing is that at ETH going up, as long as it's not going up more than 15% over a 1 week period, ETH going up tends to be good for NFTs. Broadly speaking, with NFTs, ETH going up tends to be a good thing. That means that people are putting risk on. Macro environment is okay. People are devoting, capital to crypto in general. That tends to be a good environment, even better than when ETH is down slightly. So that ideal environment for us is just kind of a trending higher environment for ETH. That's when NFTs do well in ETH terms. Thought that was pretty interesting. Thought these charts told that story pretty consistently, so wanted to include that. Story number 4. We had the biggest day ever of US dollar NFTFi loans yesterday. Okay, this chart shows you it. If you look at this chart shows total US dollars lent per day on the NFTFi platform. And you can see yesterday was the first day where over $2 million was lent. This has been a pretty broad trend. If you look at this chart, you can see January, this is in ETH terms, but January was also the biggest month for NFTFi. And you also have other platforms, of course, Bend Down Arcade. So lending has really become a pretty big theme so far in 2023. I wanted to dig into what are the NFTs that were being lent out yesterday. I saw that there were a whole bunch of different types that were lent out. One was these doodles. There were a lot of doodles that were where there were loans against them on NFTFi. What was interesting about these is they were only 1 week loans, okay? Where 5.5 ETH was being lent on a 99% APR. Now, these are pretty risky to me because the doodle's floor right now is like 5.8, so lending 5.5 against a doodle is a pretty risky trade. What you're seeing happen a lot is what they call loan-to-own loans, where basically you put out a loan, something like 1 week. Why is someone borrowing money for just 1 week? Whatever it is, there's a chance that they will default and you get to take over the NFT at a price below floor if they default. So this is, when I see really short-term loans, I sometimes think loan-to-own. The flip side is that it is a 99% APR, so they are getting compensated a bit for that risk that they're taking by putting out that loan so close to floor price. But that was interesting. And then on the other side, you have a lot of loans going against blue chip NFTs like Chromie Squiggles or CryptoPunks. Now, if you look at the terms of these loans, and there were a lot against CryptoPunks, they're like generally 30 to 60 day loans where 47 ETH is lent against these CryptoPunks. And the APR is only 7 to 8%. It's really not that high. It's certainly apples to oranges to compare ETH loans to US dollar loans. But at the bank, you can get 4% right now. So against these, you're only getting 7 to 8%. Again, it's on ETH, so it is different. But still, these are pretty low APRs, and that's been very consistent against CryptoPunks. Now, if you look at the reason the lenders are willing to take such low APRs, either A, they're hoping for a default, which I talked about earlier with the loan to own. The other thing is that punks have just been incredibly stable, really over the past year. You can see, this chart here looks at first just the CryptoPunks floor price, but then that red line is the price of the 47 ETH, where that default would happen, or where someone would not want to pay back the loan. So you can see it is below where we've been pretty consistently since mid 2021, something like that. Last thing to talk about is a few notable trades. The first, the most expensive trade of the past day was this Hoodie Cryptopunk. We've talked a lot about hoodies. It's just a grail trade. Even though it's not that rare, more than 200 of them, but you've had trades in the past few weeks at 305, 240, 288, and 272. So this 295 price is kind of right in the middle of that range. Another trade that I had to learn about, because I don't know a ton about 10KTF, is this Kennel Daypack, which sold for 30 ETH. Now, why was this so expensive? I mean, the 10KTF floor is under 1 ETH. Why did this sell for 30? The reason is that it has two traits that are very important. One is that it has the epic property, and two is that it is a genesis. Okay, and when NFTs have both of those, they can be burned for 27 GTags. And you can see in this picture here that GTags have a floor price of 1.1 ETH. So if you can burn it for 27, that's pretty serious liquidity that you're getting if you want to sell these GTags. We're not sure exactly what the GTags will be able to do. There's speculation that they will be able to be burned into PFPs, which would be a 10KTF PFP, which hasn't happened yet, just speculation. And then the last trade I want to talk about is this Deafbeef Series 0 trade, which happened for 25 ETH. Now, if you look at this chart, you can see that 25 ETH for Deafbeef is actually at the low end of the historic range. Early on, you saw these pieces going in that 100 to 150 range. The other thing you'll notice, though, is there's not much liquidity with only a few trades per quarter. Again, this is something we talked about yesterday with the Drifter Shoots piece. Some of this really great art is just so illiquid that when people want to get out, they have to accept lower prices than what it's been selling for. And I think we saw that with this 25 ETH trade. That's all for me today. I hope you enjoy the show. If you do like it below. Feel free to comment, tell us what you do like, what we can do better, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back on Monday and every weekday with your next show. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great weekend.